Hey, everybody. Great to see all y'all out there in Son of Sam land. Hey, we got a great one for you today. It's been a minute since we've done a live stream and super happy to be back. Today we'll be talking about David Berkowitz, his intellectual capabilities, and the sheer fact that he could have drawn the Son of Sam symbol, unlike what the Maury Terry fans think of him. So we actually got quite a bit to do today. It's going to be a seriously dense, information dense show. And so I don't have any flowery intros for you today because we got to get right down to business. Well, as you all know, it ain't about me. It's about we. And I always love having my team join me on these live streams. Why? Well, because it just makes it more fun and entertaining for all involved. And I just love hanging with people who, well, are on our wavelength and who get it. So, everyone out there, I think that this man needs really no introduction, but at the same time, I'm going to introduce him anyway. May I present to you a stalwart, a super ally in the fight for Son of Sam truth, and a man who, when it comes to Sam, he was through with it before you all knew what to do with it. May I present to you the one, Moet, you're going to want to be fitting to get sitting. The only Johnny Catalano. Yes, Johnny. What's up, man?
Breaking news, huh?
Yeah, well, you know, we are gonna, of course, talk about this today, about Disco Dave could have drawn the symbol, and that's the main topic of our show today. But yes, as you said, there is breaking news in the Son of Sam community. In fact, probably one of the biggest reveals since our video series came out. And what are we talking about today? We're talking about the book Monster Mirror by Michael Caparrelli, PhD. So, John, you really wanted to you really had some things to say about this, and you wanted to discuss this book a little bit more in depth than you've been able to on the forums, and you wanted to opine. As the audience knows, I gave my opinion of this book in my most recent walk and talk, and I'll definitely have some things to say today. But why don't you take it away with what you're thinking about this book?
You know, Manny, like I know neither one of us are religious, but like I've heard you mention several times over the course of the years how like you get these little signs from the universe.
Yeah.
Like we spent the last year completely. We didn't solve the Son of Sam case. That was solved in 1977, but completely debunking the ultimate evil versus the police reports on all of our walk and talks. And out of nowhere, as if you were walking down the block and the car of your dreams appeared in front of you with the keys in it. This guy, Mike Caparrelli, who has no agenda, he's not an investigator. He doesn't care about the ultimate evil. He doesn't care if Berkowitz shot one person or if he shot the entire borough. Puts out this book trying to explain what might have turned Dave Berkowitz into the Son of Sam. And he's also a pastor, so there's a spiritual element to it. And out of nowhere, everything we're convinced of for at least a year or two now, Berkowitz confirms. And to me, it's pretty ironic. And
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Although I'm sort of halfway there. I'm not fully there on this book. I think, you know, and this actually highlights something that I think is very important for the audience to understand about the way this video series works and my relationships with people that I work with. You and I actually don't fully agree on this, and we don't fully agree on every aspect of what we talk about. You and I get into it good-naturedly, of course, but we get into it behind the scenes about certain topics of this case where you feel differently than I do. And we've never once had an argument or lost our friendship because of it. And I think that's instructive because a lot of people think that I don't like dissent and that I have to be right all the time. And I just don't think that that's true. And this is one of those cases where
You're certainly not.
yeah, I think this is one of those cases where you and I have different opinions. But why don't we first get on the same page and then we can discuss this a little bit more fully. So yes, Caparrelli, this book comes out, and it really does not deal with the cult theory at all. It's or the crimes really at all, other than in terms of the psychological and religious aspects behind David Berkowitz's motivation. But there is a page that's causing quite a stir. And this is the only page we're going to show from this book. I want people to go out and buy this book if you feel like you want it in your library. I think it's worth picking up, checking out. And this is the page. So with your indulgence, John, should I read it?
Yes. Please.
All right. So shocking confessions. David is done with defense mechanisms. Coping mechanisms is what he relies upon. David is done with blocking the pain. Jesus' mandate, pick up your cross, means bear the pain. David looks up and fixes his gaze on my face. I did all the shootings. I sit speechless while witnessing a man hug a cactus tightly. My jaw drops while watching a man answer the angel's confrontational question. Yes, I am Jacob, the heel grabber, the hustler, the deceiver. I wanted to tell Mrs. Moskowitz the truth before she passed, but we never had the opportunity to meet. I wanted to tell her face to face that I did it. Nobody else. I did it. A heavy pause. I shot her beautiful daughter, Stacy. No waxing crescent moon appears in the sky. No last quarter moon hangs in that sky either. Just a full moon on display for the world to behold. I lied in that 1990s interview. I felt so much pressure from certain entities. I was in heavy denial. The trauma that I inflicted on others and myself was so deep. I'm so sorry I did that interview. I can't live in denial any longer. So the rest of this we don't have to read because this is the money shot. He's basically saying here, I did all the shootings, which we already knew, John. He wanted to apologize to Mrs. Moskowitz for the deception. And of course, here he's talking about Maury Terry. I lied in that 1990s interview. I felt so much pressure from certain entities. I know that this is true. I know that Maury Terry pressured Berkowitz into talking.
Been saying for a long time. Yes.
Correct. He totally manipulated Berkowitz in that information. And I'll go even further, and I'm putting this on record. I believe Maury Terry and David Berkowitz had a monetary relationship, that Maury Terry was paying Berkowitz in prison commissary with writing supplies. I believe that Maury Terry was basically and essentially bribing Berkowitz to tell him what he wanted to hear. And that was what Berkowitz is talking about here, and the pressure from certain entities. And, we shouldn't be too surprised because in 1979, he was calling Maury a pest, a jerk, so stupid, a rotten investigator, so dumb he would freeze to death in North Dakota. This is all something that we knew. So what's your opinions?
Manny, if you go back and look at all the videos that I was able to do with you, I've always said, I never trust Berkowitz 100%. He's flip-flopped too many times in life. I always like to cross-reference Berkowitz with a police report or another witness. So personally, I don't really need Berkowitz to make this grand confession. I hope he feels better about himself, and the surviving victims and their families maybe can get some closure with this confession. Mm-hmm. But I personally, know that to be the case before he made this confession.
Right, exactly. So, and that was the point I was making in my recent walk and talk, that although Caparrelli's book has this revelation in it, we certainly didn't need it as the top Son of Sam researchers in the game right now, never to be outdone ever in the history of this case, by the way. It's just not possible. We already...
But having said that, I don't want to downplay the significance of it.
Right,
I mean, since the Maury Terry interviews, there have been clues made by Berkowitz that he wanted to confess up to all the shootings, especially his latest parole hearings. Right. But it is a pretty big deal, and it's ironic that the people who've defended Berkowitz for the last 15 years in all these Facebook groups, saying things like, why would he confess to 2 shootings and not all of them? He's not lying. He's telling the truth. Ironically, now they're all attacking him as a liar because he's not spewing the nonsense, the fantasy tale of the ultimate evil anymore.
Right, exactly. It's what we talked about behind the scenes, and what I touched upon in the walk and talk recently, which was these people think Berkowitz is lying to everybody and everything. They believe he's lying to Abrahamson. He read a book on Freudian psychology, so he knew how to manipulate Abrahamson. Yeah, okay. All those 1,000 pages of letters are all lies. He lied to Caparrelli. He lied to the Queen's DA. He lied to the NYPD. He lied
to the Queen's DA. He lied to the Queen's DA.
Right.
He lied to the Brooklyn DA.
He lied to every investigator except to Maury Terry. He told the truth. And here's an example of what you're saying. And of course, this is, and I don't care about leaving this person's name in because she's a horrific human being who is one of the lowest forms of life I've ever come across in this. That's just me talking. I know I'm not speaking for John. But here's what you're saying. This person who believed everything Berkowitz said in The Ultimate Evil, I don't trust a word he says. No demon possession. Isn't that part of his con game to sell programs for Christian groups to help teens? The author is involved with these groups. Will they catch on he is a liar and still promote and sell his videos to help trouble teens? Also, he won't talk about the shootings. Saying I did them takes the pressure off. I mean, what is she even talking about here?
So, who is she talking about?
Caparrelli and Berkowitz.
Oh, okay.
And then here we go. See right here. Quite honestly, I don't trust the author. In photos, he is hugging David, big smiles and laughs between them. This is not the behavior of a reputable doctor when interviewing a serial killer. I'd just like to add R.L. Stetcher. Did he ever see the pictures of Maury Terry smiling with David Berkowitz and with his arm around him? And I think R.L. Stetcher one day will realize that Maury Terry was paying David Berkowitz. So,
silly, because the guy spent 100 hours with him. They're Christian brothers. I mean, he'd be inhuman if they didn't form a bond. It's just so silly.
Right, exactly. And again, it gets back to your point where Berkowitz is a truth teller only to Maury Terry in the world, but he lied to everyone else. I mean, it just makes no sense. And then here's another cope. So Gabriel Arguijo. Maybe him saying this, he did it all, is his way of copping out again. He has mentioned that he still has to live by the prison code of not being a snitch, so there's that to consider. I wouldn't take his word as being truth when it comes to him acting alone. He's lied and bullshitted for years, obviously. Why say he was a member of a cult and had accomplices to some, then say he acted alone to others? I can't believe Maury committed so much time and energy into this case and it was all a big charade to slander a murderer. I believe his theory has a lot of weight and that the truth still has people shitting bricks. Otherwise, we wouldn't have these smear campaigns. Maybe it wasn't the process church of the final judgment running things. Maybe it was. I believe the threat was more on a street level and therefore more dangerous. A lot of people on the periphery died violently. That makes more sense to me than religious kooks with no balls ordering Joe Schmo to go out and kill in the name of Satan. So now they're off the process. Now it's a local group, and he's still lying about the cult because he doesn't want to be a snitch. I mean, why don't they just take the L and realize he did it alone, John? Like, what's going on?
Manny, let me just say the last thing I want to say about this. I mean, Caparrelli says he believes Berkowitz. I assume he's an intelligent guy. I assume if he's good with it, that he feels Berkowitz is being sincere. Personally, it doesn't matter to me.
It doesn't. We have the evidence.
Enough evidence to dismantle the ultimate evil theory.
Oh, just our Brooklyn series alone just destroyed it. Not to mention all the work we've done for the last 2 years. I mean, you're right. We don't need
Voskerichian. Nothing ever is in sync with the book. It's always manipulated and spun. But anyhow, having said that, if in the face of everything we've learned in the last 2 years, the data dump, Queen's DA, the Killer Tape podcast, and now this confession, if you're still repeating the mantra and the fantasy of Maury Terry, then congratulations, you are actually in the cult. You are actually in the cult of Maury Terry, and you refuse to acknowledge reality and use common sense and evaluate information.
Here. And you know
Yeah.
what? I couldn't have said it better myself. And I have a perfect example of this and this is from Alan Baxter, who's a major process believer. This guy did a whole paper on how there was the meeting at Donovan's house and Berkowitz was there. I mean, total claptrap. So here he is, again, completely ignorant of the actual facts of the case, as I'm going to show. So this is, again, this is more response to Caparrelli's book. So then if he shot every victim, he was an incredibly poor marksman. In the interviews with Carl, he says he could not say who shot him. I believe he said he did not see who shot him, and that was back in 21, 22. So he was lying to Carl's face just this past year. I mean, come on, DB is starting to wear thin. Is this book and revelation a parole tactic? So this actually segues us into our main topic today, because Alan Baxter, again, is ignorant. I'm not going to say he's stupid. Okay. I don't know Alan Baxter. I'm not going to say he's unintelligent, but I am going to say he's completely ignorant, because Alan, look at your first line here. Then if he shot every victim, he was an incredibly poor marksman. In 1979, Alan, Berkowitz addressed this very issue in 2 letters to Abrahamson. Why did I shoot with one hand, and when I missed, why was I frustrated, you ask? Well, the best answer I could give is a 50-50 one. I wanted to take a life, yet I wanted to spare a life. Okay, so here we go. He's talking about shooting with one hand. And in Denaro's case specifically, the second job was the Denaro Keenan one. Both of them were sitting in a red Volkswagen and making out. This was my second murder attempt with my .44. I had approached from the rear of the car, walked up to the passenger side window, and opened fire. I was more frightened than they were. Only one bullet struck the young man, and he really wasn't the intended target. Alan, read this. I had fired with one hand and wildly. Boy, did I really mess up. But really, I was very nervous. So here's an example of stuff. We've shown this now for a year and a half. What I don't understand is why the morons out there, MAURONS, just literally ignore every piece of evidence out there, and they just don't update their operating system. This is insane.
Nobody ever said he was a marksman. Nobody ever said he was a professional hitman. He was a deranged man. Obviously, he was nervous at the sites, and he did what he did. I can say, thank God he was a bad shot.
Right, exactly, because 6 more people would have been dead. Right, exactly. Yeah. So these people got to get with the program. Now, having said that, before we get into the topic of today, which is a perfect segue from where we just left off with the ignorance of the Terry fan, I do want to just add one editorial comment, which I got into in my walk and talk. So this shouldn't be new to people who saw the walk and talk, but I have serious problem with Caparrelli's book, because even though Berkowitz admits to doing the shootings alone, which is, of course, a huge vindication of our video series, right? This is Berkowitz actually saying he did it alone. This is after our video series came out. This is recent interview, the most recent interviews, and big ups to Caparrelli for actually getting out there and doing what none of us have done, which is talk to David Berkowitz, okay? This isn't to say we're not trying, but he actually went out and did it. Now, having said that, he does have a couple pages in this book where Berkowitz is talking about hanging out in Untermeyer Park with Daniel Gajusek as the spiritually sick Nobel Prize winner, as Moloch, and all this stuff. I mean, he's having his cake and eating it too. That stuff is all claptrap and garbage. Berkowitz was not hanging out with a Nobel Prize winner in Untermeyer Park. Complete BS. So I have problems with that aspect of the book. So that's why I would love for Caparrelli to come on and actually have a real discussion with real Son of Sam researchers. Not the D-list squad of this, but the A-level people. And he's been invited on, and hopefully he'll reconsider, and we can have a discussion with this guy, because I think it would be very eye-opening to talk with him. So any last word on that before we get on with our subject today?
Yeah, that would be great. I'd really love to speak to him about it. I think he'd say he believes Berkowitz from what I gather so far. Mm-hmm. But although I understand where you're coming from, by the same token, I wouldn't fall down and die if it turns out that Berkowitz had a casual meeting with the Carr brothers and they smoked some pot and did some kind of mock seance or whatever.
See, this is where you and I have one of our riffs, and it's fine. I don't think he knew them in any way, shape, or form. You're still entertaining the thought that it's possible.
I'm just saying, I wouldn't like it wouldn't be the most shocking revelation to me in this whole story.
Right.
But maybe one day we'll get to the bottom of that also. I don't know, with all this time that's passed, how many people we can gather up that have ever seen them together. I mean, we know Brother John is long gone, and we know his story.
Right. We have the caveman.
Yeah, the caveman.
We don't know. I mean, I think the caveman was trolling us. And then, of course, we have the usher who I spoke to in 2003, who talked about Wheaties and Berkie hanging out together at the marina. But then he later came out and said that he was trolling me just for fun back then. So the only actual eyewitnesses we have to Berkowitz and Carr hanging out turned out to be very problematic and not trustworthy or reliable. So, back to the drawing board on that one. So
what I would say, Manny, is it regardless of if this is all true or not, the current version from Berkowitz is a lot more believable.
Yeah.
Sounds a lot more like reality than the last version.
Right.
So,
and so
whether it's all true or not, well, I guess that's to be seen.
Right. And the version, just to summarize the book as vis-a-vis the cult theory, because this book, it barely even touches on the actual conspiracy. The main gist is that Berkowitz admits he did it alone, but he was hanging out with Daniel Gajusek and the Carr brothers in Untermeyer Park, and part of their rituals, and but they had nothing whatsoever to do with Son of Sam. So kind of a mixture of our video series and what he's been saying in the past. And that's basically it. I want to just put out there to Ruby, if you can link to Caparrelli's book. I'm purposely not showing you the pages where he talks about the cult because I don't want to blow up this guy's spot. I want him to sell some books. Let's show him some love. Like I said, he did something that none of us did, and he should be commended for that. He got Berkowitz himself to say, I didn't have help in the shootings. So that brings
final note.
Yeah, exactly. The final word.
Let me give a final note.
Oh,
again.
please.
So I thought it was interesting that Caparrelli was interviewed on a conspiracy theory show, and not one of them asked him about the confession of Berkowitz.
Well, to be fair, that was part one. There's a part two, I'm sure, coming. And it's been a blast watching those guys buy views. I watched their view count go from 30 views, which is like their average, to 835 within 3 minutes. And then it went back down to 700. And then 5 minutes later, it was at 1.600 with no additional comments and only 5 comments at the time. Now it's up to 9, which is statistically impossible. These guys are actually purchasing views. And I know that you don't particularly care to comment on that, but I'll just say that
I don't really know how that all works with YouTube.
Oh, it's super easy. If anyone looks up buy YouTube views, there are services in Asia where they have bot farms, and you just pay $50 to get 1,000 views. I never even once considered it because I don't need to do that crap, and plus I don't care about my view count. But these guys, it's funny, on the interview that I did with them 2 years ago, overnight it went to 13,000 views. And every other video they have has like 25 views, 30 views. So it gave me the stink eye right early. Like, what's up with these people? They're deceptive. And if they're deceptive about that, if they're lying about their view count and trying to fool you into thinking they have views when they really don't, well, what else are they lying about? So anyway, that's all I want to say on that. Ruby put the link to the book.
It's just strange that the whole thesis of their show is that there was a conspiracy in the Son of Sam shooting. And you have a guy here that just got a confession and you don't ask him about
Well, like I said, wait till part 2. Let's see what comes up. Let's be fair to the D-listers. I'm not even going to call them competition because we don't have competition. Let's just be fair to the people in the cheap seats and the bleachers. And they have part 2 coming up. So I can't wait to watch that. go from 30 views to 2,000 views in the span of 3 minutes too. All right, so let's get on with our subject, because it's kind of part and parcel of what we're talking about today: the absolute ignorance of the Maury Terry fan when it comes to the intellectual, mental, and occult capabilities of Disco Dave Berkowitz. So yes, Disco Dave could have drawn the symbol, John. And of course, the inspiration from this show came from one of these people in the Terry camp. A comment someone sent to me that really, really kind of got me angry. And I'm going to read this. I took out this person's name. I don't want to make them feel stupid. So here it is. I guess, so she's talking about Berkowitz here, okay, and his intellectual capacity. And she's being sarcastic here, okay? So for those of you who can't read sarcasm, this is all sarcasm. I guess he had lots of time to read Israel Regardie's 1,000+ page books on the Golden Dawn and to comprehend the garble, all the while lighting fires prolifically, driving constantly to find victims, reading other material to incorporate into the letters, like a good working knowledge of tarot and symbolism, which is 100% obvious to anyone who has studied them, literature, poetry, writing in fairly complicated metaphors and using symbolism while not having 300-level college coursework and working full-time, all while having no internet access in the 70s for quick research. Yeah, totally makes sense to me. I'm not saying he isn't smart enough to have pulled it off. I'm saying he didn't have the time and required training from others. So what I've done is I've made a synopsis of what this person just said. She said that Berkowitz did not read occult literature, okay? She also said that Berkowitz couldn't write. All right. She also said that Berkowitz needed the internet to do research, right? That he couldn't do any research on his own without the internet. Okay. That's a big thing with these people. And that Berkowitz needed training, quote, training from others about occult symbology. So in other words, she's just once again tailoring her biases into this comment of hers, with zero knowledge of the actual facts on the case. So I want to talk about where these morons originally got the thought that Berkowitz was a dummy, and it came from the ultimate evil. Very conveniently enough for Maury Terry's thesis that Berkowitz was too stupid, right? So it came from this paragraph here, where Charles Hamilton, okay, the handwriting expert, says, I've studied much of Berkowitz's writing and many samples of his printing. The Breslin letter is a masterpiece by comparison. Berkowitz doesn't write like that, doesn't print like that, and doesn't think like that. Further, he's incapable of it. Whoever wrote that letter to Breslin is possessed of a high degree of urbanity and wit, is well educated, and is able to make words flow beautifully together. Berkowitz can't do it, and his limited education shows in everything he writes. So that's basically all we need to read there. This guy Hamilton is saying that Berkowitz was a dummy who couldn't write. Now, we have not only proven that to be complete BS in all of our shows about the apartment letters and the Breslin letter and the Borelli letter, but I also did a show called An Exploration into Charles Hamilton, where I showed that this guy was the drunkest, most con artist. He was considered a total lunatic in the industry. People thought he was like the biggest con. He was part of at least 3 hoaxes that I documented on that show. And he was basically considered a joke in the industry. So that's who Maury Terry used to tell all of us how Berkowitz was really stupid. So any thoughts so far, John?
It's just this. It's the same story they use over and over. He wasn't capable of writing the letters, as if those letters were Edgar Allan Poe class.
Right.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's totally ridiculous. Now,
the guy happens to have at least had a average intelligence at the minimum.
At the minimum,
and actually, I'd say his writing was pretty damn good.
Yeah, if you study his writing like we have, all 1,000 pages of the Abrahamson letters, all his.
How much occult studying did he have to do to come up with a couple of these?
Well, we're actually gonna answer that question in today's show. So here's the Son of Sam symbol, right? The amazingly complex symbol that Berkowitz could never have come up with on his own, right? Even though it says SOS here, it's just a bunch of crosses with circles and an X. It's really not that big a deal. But so this is the symbol that we're talking about. And of course, this is in Berkowitz's handwriting here. So he definitely drew the symbol. Now we're going to get into the fact that people think it was John Carr and all that kind of crap. But let's lay the foundation first. Let's talk about what Maury Terry said about the symbol. Because remember, we are the channel that debunks Maury Terry. We're debunking the cult theory. It was only Maury Terry who thought there was a cult theory. No other human in the face of the planet Earth thought that there was a cult in Son of Sam, except for Maury Terry. Okay. So he's the person who we have to debunk. So he said, the police said they believe the graphic symbol at the letter's end utilized the universal signs for male and female. This was incorrect. Actually, Maury was correct. There's the sign for male and there's the sign for female. But this was incorrect. The symbol had its origins with 19th century occultist Eliphas Levi, and the quote signs unquote were actually astrological renderings of Mars, the god of war, and Venus, goddess of the Roman sewers, who was also known as Placida. 3 weeks later, Judy Placido of Wickham Avenue was celebrating. So he goes right into saying Placida into Placido, steering us into thinking that there was a connection. And Eliphas Levi, which was where Placido was shot at the Eliphas disco. So you see how he's doing this, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, he found this symbol right here. And he said, that's the origin of the symbol. Now, I don't know that to be true. How do we know that to be true? But he said even more here, okay? Here he is talking about that symbol. This is Larry Siegel, the 29-year-old researcher who was the original one who told Maury the process was involved. Larry then reached for an occult work entitled The Book of Ceremonial Magic. You talked about Behemoth and Eliphas being the same thing. Take a look at this. On the cover of the book, a large circular symbol of an obvious occult derivation was staring at me. I shrugged and asked Larry what he was getting at. Look inside the circle near the center. So as an aside, John, right here, Maury's saying he was too dumb to look at a picture and interpret it himself. He needed Larry to interpret it. So it looked like the graphic symbol on the Breslin letter. It wasn't exact, but all the elements were there. It was very similar to the Sam symbol and was identified as the goetic circle of black evocations and pacts. On the inside pages, I read a section which explained the symbol's origins. I almost dropped the book. The symbol was created by famed 19th century occultist Eliphas Levi. It was another Eliphas link. So anyway, they're talking about the symbol, and they're going crazy because there's a word around it that says Berkiel, and the other was Amasarak, which spelled backwards is Burke, and Sam Carr. So these guys creamed all over this. They thought that they found the actual symbol, and God knows how true this is. Remember, Maury Terry was a liar. We don't know whether this conversation actually took place. For all we know, he found this symbol and then fit a conversation, right, to make it fit. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But at the same time, it does sort of look like the symbol. We see here an X, right? We see some crosses, we see some circles, and there's no doubt that it's similar to the Son of Sam symbol. But my question, John, is, and this I put out there to the audience, is this the only place where he could have gotten the idea for this symbol? And so that's what we're going to explore in this in today's show. So is that the only possible inspiration? Now, I don't know anything about the occult. I think it's the stupidest shit on planet Earth. I get accused of being in the process, whatever that means. I mean, I get accused of being a Satanist and all this kind of crap. I mean, these are the same people who believe Berkowitz didn't shoot Carl Denaro. I mean, so we're not dealing with sane people here. But I looked up occult symbology and I found this word sigil. Okay. So sigil is a type of symbol used in magic. The term has usually referred to a pictorial signature of a deity or spirit. In modern usage, especially in the context of chaos magic, sigil refers to a symbolic representation of the practitioner's desired outcome. Whatever that means, right? All I'm concerned about is the artwork here. So sigils. So here's some sigils. I'm seeing some X's. I'm seeing crosses. I'm seeing circles. Right. And so I looked up more stuff here. Here's the Son of Sam symbol. Here's the Eliphas symbol. But here's all these other sigils with X's, male and female signs, all sorts of weird triangles and circles put together with crosses in the middle. Over here, Beelzebub. This looks like an X with O's on it, right? All I'm saying is that Berkowitz didn't need to take inspiration from this here, right? He could have gotten this idea to draw this from any occult books that he looked at and studied.
Can I just say something?
Please.
As an untrained eye, this Berkowitz's symbol really doesn't look like the Eliphas Levi symbol. This looks like a cross with 3 circles, and this looks like an X with the male and female, and a cross with the S for maybe Sam.
Right.
I don't actually even make the connection between those two. I know I don't really know what I'm looking at.
Right.
But you can see that it doesn't really look like the same symbol.
Right. They had to really stretch this. And of course, this was the one that Maury chose because it had Berkowitz, right, and Carr in there. And he could use his backwards thing with Satanism. Oh, they spell things backwards and that's their thing. Really? I don't know that to be true. I mean, maybe that's possible. But all I know is that the sigil for Azazel has X's here and circles. The symbol for Balaam has a triangle with a cross at the end of it, sort of similar to what's going on here with triangles, crosses, X's, you know, like Berkowitz could have looked at any occult book and gotten this knowledge, right? Here's a whole list of sigils that look, this one looks like the son of Sam. I mean, they all have elements of the son of Sam symbol in them if you really study them. Now, I don't care about this stuff. I think it's all claptrap and BS, but some people take this stuff very seriously. Like, look at this right here. Here's an X, right? There's moons and lines. I mean, it's all kind of there. So the question that we need to ask ourselves, of course, people think John Carr drew it first, and we'll get to that now. But we're going to come back to this whole notion of Berkowitz as ignorant. What did Berkowitz? These people think Berkowitz didn't have any occult knowledge. But first, let's deal with this issue first, because the Maury Terry fans always come to the part of the book where John Carr drew the symbol first, and Berkowitz just copied it, right? And here's the passage. Even more telling about Carr's involvement in the Son of Sam case were statements from Tom Taylor and Darlene Christensen, who each said they saw him draw the Son of Sam graphic symbol on the back of a Minot telephone directory in February 1977, 4 months before it first appeared in the Breslin letter, but immediately after Carr returned to North Dakota from an extended stay in Yonkers. Taylor said Carr explained the symbol's meaning to him and Darlene at the time. They didn't know it was later used in a Son of Sam communication. So, John, what do you get when you read this?
I don't really think they ever actually said it was the same symbol. I think he drew something, and then they kind of talked them into saying, look, you see how similar it is?
Right. Well, we'll get to that because you and I are going to actually read a few pages from the deposition of Tom Taylor and Darlene Christensen. But one of the things I get from this passage is he just says here, Carr's involvement in the Son of Sam case, as if it's stated fact, right? Yeah. And then he basically says here that, like what you said, Tom and Darlene unequivocally and absolutely said that he drew the symbol. Well, let's read what they actually wrote. So I'm just going to take the first. I'm going to be. Okay, so there's 3 characters here. Okay, there's Darlene Christensen, DC. There's Tom Taylor. These are the 2 people that Maury Terry just said, absolutely said that John Carr wrote the sign symbol. And there's Michael Armienti. He's the questioner. So I'm gonna be Darlene Christensen and Tom Turkey, and you're gonna be Michael Armienti. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right. So you read the MAs, and I'll read the DCs and TTs. Okay. So DC, okay. And he mentioned some names, but Tom Taylor. Do you remember what he wrote in that phone book? No, I do not. So here she is saying she doesn't even remember what he wrote. Okay. Right. He wrote a warning. He wrote a warning of some kind, like a cult warning. And so you're Michael Armienti.
You know what it said?
No, we can't not remember because
How do you know it was a cult?
Because after you came down and talked to us, and that now I realize it was a warning of some kind. But at the time, it didn't make sense. Yeah, it was something strange. DC. But now it makes sense. And the fact that it was a warning against, oh, geez, something about beware the eyes of something or other, because that day is the day that we will come and get you and we will take you away to where it's, what the hell was it? Where it's dark. Where it's dark and it's cold and we will own you. Something on that order. But it, John?
Were there any names in that?
No, there wasn't. Not that I can recall, but there is a sign he wrote. He made some kind of sign, and it had a cross in it.
Can you duplicate the sign for me?
No, I can.
If
I can show you what I remember of it, but
if I were to draw to the sign, would you remember it? If I were to draw the sign,
I could tell you if it was the same one. That's it. That is it. That is it.
This is the one?
That's it. Yeah. Only there is more.
There's another marking here?
There were a few more marks. There was a mark there, and then there was something covering over this and something covering over this, but it looked like the male and female signs and an F, and an S, and that's all I can remember.
If I were to show you the precise symbol later on this afternoon, you would recognize it then, right?
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
Because that looks close to what it was. Only it was just it was really just minute. It was only as big as this around. It was just a little tiny, and it was something about beware of the eyes. I can't remember what it said. It was a warning of some sort. Beware, because they knew who they were, and they were gonna come and get him. And once they got him, they would own him, and they could do no harm to anyone else. Something on that order. I cannot remember.
Okay, so what did he do after he tried to hang himself with the ace bandage?
He came back. He came back in, and he just sat down, and he started muttering to himself again. And that was when he picked up the phone book and he wrote something on it.
What phone book? The phone directory? A public phone directory? Or was it his personal telephone book?
Public. It was the City of Minot phone book. It was the one for the apartment.
And what did he write on that?
Something about beware of the eyes or whatever, and that he was going to take care of that person. And when he did, they wouldn't be able to hurt him again. They were going to take him to a place where it was dark and cold and he could never get anyone to hurt him again. And then he drew that little sign.
He drew a symbol?
The one like
this one
similar to that.
This one I sketched myself?
It was similar to that one.
Which is somewhat vague at this point, but I'm going to show you an exact symbol that I'd like you to look at in a little while.
Was it the symbol that was in the paper?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was it. The more I think about it.
That's the symbol that was on Berkowitz's letter published in the newspaper. That same symbol.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more positive I am.
Okay, I'll show it to you later.
Okay, and anyway, it just got to the point where he was gooning out too much, and I just said I had enough of this. All right, so we don't need to go through this. So read this one, the last line.
Do you know what happened to that telephone directory that he used?
It got thrown away. We already tried to get a hold of it once, but see, we moved out in February, and the other people moved out at the end of March, around April. And when they moved...
Why did you try to get hold of it?
Because of what he had written on there. See, when Gardner and Knoop approached us earlier, we told them about that, and they asked us if there was any possibility of getting it. So I checked it out, and they threw it out when they moved.
Did you notice the following morning any other writings that John Carr may have authored?
No, not that I noticed. So real quick, I want to go through what we just read, because there's another little addendum that we're going to read again. So basically what I get from this, John, is that this guy Turkey had no clue what he was talking about. Michael Armienti had to draw it to him in order to jog his memory, and then he just agreed with Michael Armienti when he drew the symbol for him.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't remember this, they couldn't remember that. They said it was a minute thing. Then they're talking about beware the eyes of March, and I mean that's a Shakespeare line. I mean,
the eyes. Yeah, the eyes.
It's crazy. All right, so let's continue. Just another page or two. So this is a continuation of tape 1 of the interview with Thomas and Darlene. It is now 8:15, October 26th. So now this is later on. Tom and Darlene have had time to think. And this is a huge part of this right here. Okay.
Is that the symbol that he drew?
So real quick, this is Armienti showing him the Son of Sam symbol.
Yes.
So no, it's not exactly like he did it much more clearly. And when he did it, he explained to me, you see the male sign up on the top part here was, you know, he had his totally above it. The female part was at one part, and there was like, see this part right here? This is supposed to be a snake. This is supposed to be like an S, okay? That's not, I don't know what that even looks like there, but when he did it, it was more like an S. And then there was just I can't remember if it might have been a male to female sign going through one of the fucking cross parts.
Yeah, but this is basically the same symbol.
Basically, it is.
I mean, just that. It's not as clear as his.
Right. He explained to me what each part meant.
Now, what I'm showing Mr.
Taylor
is the symbol beneath the word Son of Sam in an article printed in the Minot Daily News on Wednesday, October 24th, 1979. It is now approximately 8:25, and I'm resuming the conversation with Mr. Thomas Taylor. Okay, Tom, you had mentioned that the symbol I had shown you was the same symbol that John Carr had written down. Where was that written?
He drew it. He drew it on the back of a Minot telephone directory, a Minot City telephone directory, along with the warning in very large letters.
Warning to whom?
To anybody, I would imagine, more or less. To me and Darlene, because it was more directed, you know. That was where he was directing his thoughts. And I don't know where Darlene gets off on this, what she was saying about the darkness and crap like that, because that wasn't there. His warning was very few words. It was like about 8 or 9 words all together, very largely written. It reminded me very, very much when I saw that handwriting that the guy showed me of the letter that was wrote to the editor of whatever paper in New York. Now, I want to stop here because here Tom Taylor is saying that the warning was written in 8 or 9 words all together, very largely written. Okay. Now, Tom Taylor. Now, look in this over here. DC is saying that it was just really minute and it was only as big as this around. It was just little, tiny. So one's saying it's big, one's saying it's tiny. These people can't get it together. They sound like they sound like absolute drug addicts and junkies. And so here is the one of the last pages, I believe.
Who showed you this letter?
The detective that came down the first time.
Detective Chinati?
Chinati, right. It reminded me very much. In fact, I was the one who reminded Darlene about that.
What did you say? What did you tell her?
I just said, hey, remember that shit, Darlene? Remember that shit that JC wrote in the Minot telephone book, you know? And Darlene, all of a sudden, she remembers the shit, you know?
Do you remember what the message or what the warning said in the back of the telephone directory?
No, I don't.
Was it in script or in print?
It was in print, and it was in very, God, you know, I'd almost swear that it was the same print that I saw on that fucking letter. Excuse the swearing. It's just natural. I would almost swear to it in court. So this is the last page, John, and here he is not remembering, whereas before it said the eyes of March, and here he's not remembering. One saying it was in large letters, one saying it was in short letters. Michael Armienti had to draw it for them in order to remind them. I mean, what's your opinion of this interview?
It's funny, too, because, like, whenever Sonati, Knoop, Gardner, and Maury Terry interviewed the same people that Armienti and the rest of the Lifers guys interview, it's always like a completely
different,
you know, it's always a different version.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Right. I mean,
and anybody that's questioning that, go listen to Maury Terry's interview with Lifer, where Lifer basically tells Maury, we sent our guys down to North Dakota and we've got nothing.
It was a freaking wild
situation. We go there to confirm it, and we got nothing back.
Yeah, it was a total wild goose chase. And of course, Chinati, listen, I respect Chinati as a man. I applaud the service that he did in the NYPD because he did do some good work. But Chinati, I'm just gonna say it out there and put it on record. Chinati was a mentally ill cop who was a known crank in the New York Police Department. In fact, I'm just going to put it out there. Eric, this is what Eric told me. I never wanted to make this public, but I think I have to because it shows the person Chinati was in 1980 when all this was going down. Chinati actually thought he was the real Pope. And that the Pope and that the Pope in because remember how religious this guy is. He thought he was the real Pope, and he thought the Pope in the Vatican was an imposter. And the NYPD actually took his gun away because he threatened to kill the actual Pope. This is Detective Henry Chinati, the mentally ill Veronica Lucan believer who Maury Terry never told us this about, and he used him just like he used Carl, in my opinion, and Nasa Moskowitz, in my opinion, to give his investigation that sheen of credibility.
I never actually heard that story. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I never told it publicly because I wanted to see. I was so loyal to Eric that he told me these things, and you know, I never wanted to say it out in public. But the Son of Sam community needs to know the truth. Because while Eric has since gone against our video series, he's acting very strange out there in public and doing some very dumb things. And so I no longer feel bound by my loyalty to Eric. So I'm just telling the stories that Eric told me and Chinati also had a costume of the Pope in his closet. So this is who Maury was traipsing around Untermeyer Park with in 1979, a religious freak, mentally ill religious freak who thought he was the Pope.
They went storming for Untermeyer Park with baseball bats, looking to find Occult. I mean, you do remember that story?
Yeah,
right?
Of course. And I wish that I could hear the real story of what actually happened there, because I'm sure it's a lot more interesting. So Furby is telling me to be gentle. I don't know who Furby is, but gentle is not my forte.
Manny, I have to say, brother, and you know I have love for you, but as much as you hate Donald Trump, you couldn't be any more like him. You've never met a fight you don't want. You'll go on Twitter and fight with the Pope himself. So maybe she's got a point.
You know what it has to do with? It has to do with my need to be right, and it comes from my upbringing where I was never given much support by my by people who should have supported me more. And so yeah, I fully recognize the psychology, and yeah, it's a flaw of mine. But I just am not the type of person that can handle bullshit. Like I just don't handle it very well.
You know what it is, Manny? I just think at this stage, like we're never going to convince a certain group of this community of Son of Sam. Like you could literally show them a videotape of Berkowitz shooting Moskowitz via line, and they'd say it's a fake.
Right, it's fake.
There's nothing you can do. Like there's no convincing them that the book doesn't match the police reports or the witness interview. Like there's nothing you can say.
There's nothing you can say because they even
have a good conversation with them.
Right.
I've tried on every one of these community pages. I've posted news articles. I posed a question. All you get back is derogatory comments about your personality,
right.
You're this, you're that. You know, you never get a good argument in response.
Well, you know what just happened to me? I joined one of these Facebook groups online in good faith. I think it was called Son of Sam Real Connections, and I went up on that Facebook group, and again, it seems to be a dedicated Maury Terry site. And I just put up posts with the police reports. What do you think about this? Here's Maury Terry's page from his book. Here's the police report. What do you think about this? And I got kicked out of the group. So that's basically what these people are about. And so, yeah, I agree. But listen, even though you are correct and there's no convincing these people, let's try to convince some of the smarter ones.
Let's try again.
So again, back to the symbol. All right. So we have shown a couple things so far, guys. We've shown that the Maury Terry fan thinks that Berkowitz was dumb and didn't have the requisite occult knowledge to know about sigils and make up a sigil for himself. 2, we've seen how Maury most likely manipulated that symbol into his thesis, right? And then used it to fit a preconceived notion. Okay. Now I'm not saying that's a fact. I'm just saying we're seeing that that's possible. Number 3, we're seeing that John Carr did not draw the symbol in a Minot phone book because we just don't have the proof of it. We have two drug addicts talking about big letters, small letters. I swear to it in fucking court. No, it was an F. No, it was an S. No, the female sign was there. No, it was a male sign. These people were drugged out. They have no clue what they're talking about. So we're now at the point where we have to see what Disco Dave had to say about the whole thing. So again, remember, this is the inspiration for our show. This comment that he couldn't have read, he didn't read occult knowledge, he didn't books, he didn't have occult knowledge, he didn't know about symbolism, he didn't have internet access. Well, let's read what Berkowitz wrote to Abrahamson in 1979. And this isn't a long letter, but it's a page long. And we do need to read the whole thing, John, because it's important, because this is the page that proves them completely wrong.
Right.
So with your indulgence, John, I'm going to start. Is that cool?
Great.
Okay. Dear Dr. Abramson, Sam Carr and the demons. Yes, it was all a hoax, a silly hoax, well planned and thought out. I just never thought this demon story would carry out so much. At the time I was committing the crimes, the Son of Sam shootings, I felt guilty unconsciously. Therefore, I needed to somehow justify everything in my mind, condone it, and somehow mentally convince myself that there was meaning, purpose, and justification for my acts. This is where the demon story came into being. It gave me the mental motivation and the mental justification I needed at the time. However, deep down inside, I knew I was the real demon, so to speak. It was just me, myself, and I. Now, I'm going to stop here. This is what he just said to Caparrelli. Exactly. Right?
Yes.
So here he is 45 years later, or whatever it is, saying the exact same thing that he said in 1979. And that's why I believe Caparrelli, and mainly I believe Caparrelli's book, because it's just part and parcel what Berkowitz was saying for the last 50 years.
I do believe it. I just wish Berkowitz wouldn't have gave them all the ammunition between 1979 and 1990, whatever, the Maury interview.
Right.
He gave them a lot of flip-flopping and a lot of misinformation. So it does make our struggle a little harder.
Right.
To believe it.
Exactly. That's why I have problems with Caparrelli's book, but overall I'm happy with the fact that like you, that he said that he did it alone. All right, so let me
we're happy to cross-reference it with all the information that we've been blessed with for the last couple of years also.
Exactly. And you and I and people like Book Club, Ruby, all of us on our video series, Derek Larson, we're able to do that because we have intelligence and we have the ability to synthesize information. So this is the reason I pleaded guilty, because I was. And the going berserk in the courtroom was an act too. I was trying to convince people that I was totally possessed. It was a desperate attempt, but it was just a case of pseudo-possession, imaginary possession. Let's say I needed to be possessed. I wanted to be possessed. The ideas about demons came to me when I attended a Baptist church in Louisville, Kentucky, when I was in the service. All the sermons were about demons, sin, hell, eternal damnation. I believe this also had a bad effect on my life and mind. So full stop. Let's talk about this. So right here, he was an evangelical Christian and was in these Bible revivals in the early 70s. This is one place he could have learned a lot of this knowledge.
Yes, and he did say he learned about possession and the rapture, and he was into some heavy, those heavy Southern Christian. What do they call that? Fire and brimstone?
Fire and brimstone, exactly. The Bible thumping. Yeah. Even his friends were very disturbed at the fact that he was using all that language in the letters to him. But here's the money shot. Okay, and I want the person who wrote that comment about how he didn't have any occult knowledge, didn't read any occult books, didn't do any occult research, needed other people to tell him. I want them to really listen up right now, because you're going to learn something. In addition, I read numerous books such as Billy Graham's Angels, The Exorcist, The Omen, Rosemary's Baby, Hostage to the Devil by Malachi Martin, and many other religious books on the spirit world and the occult. After reading these books, I then knew that this would be a good excuse to commit serious crimes. Perhaps the best book you could possibly read to understand my situation would be Occult, Bondage, and Deliverance by Kurt Koch, PhD. This book is published by Kregel Publications, P.O. Box 2607, Grand Rapids, Michigan. The cost is $175. Kurt Koch is a Christian counselor, and the second half of the book, part 2, is written by Dr. Alfred Lechler, a counselor who has dealt with many people who claim to be possessed. Dr. Lechler is not a religious nut, but a professional. In his chapter called Neurosis or the Demonic, the subject of pseudo-possession is brought up. Pages 181 through 183 fit me exactly, right down to the T. You must read this book. It's geared for Christian psychologists and people in the mental health field. It has religious overtones, but it's also medical, so to speak. I am not a Christian, nor am I religious. I'm somewhat agnostic, but I once had very strong beliefs in religion, the occult, and the supernatural. Lastly, I say again, page 131 through 183 of the book explain fully the reason and motives behind the demon story. And the rest of this we don't need to read. So here he is talking about all the books he read. He said he read many books on the occult. And he's even talking about down to the pages of the book, John.
He's even referring people to particular books and giving them the address of how much.
I mean, this is insane. So, but the reason why I fixate on this letter and this book in particular is because, and again, we're talking about the best book you could possibly read is Occult Bondage and Deliverance, P.O. Box 2607, Grand Rapids. Now, here's the book. Right. Now, this is, I own the book. Okay, I bought it. Sorry, I bought it off of eBay, off of Amazon, and I got the one that he got. And just so you can see, he said it was the Craigle Publications, P.O. Box 2607, Grand Rapids. Here's the copyright notice for this particular edition of the book. Craigle Publications, P.O. Box 2607, Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's the same book. Here is the book that he had. Okay, now I want people to look at the cover of this book and the Son of Sam symbol. We have X's. We have tons of X's. We have male and female signs and crosses. We have male and female signs a little bit altered. We have arrows. We have moons, right? We have circles. John, all the elements are here
100%
for him to make that. And if you think about it, this is such a basic symbol, right? That it does seem like he copied off this book. The X, just straight up that he copied that. He copied the circles without the dot in the middle. He copied the arrows. There's an arrow. There's an arrow, right? Now it's not exact, but to me, it's more closer than the Aliphos one.
At the risk of sounding condescending, Manny, I don't see where the issue is. I really don't see where the issue is.
Well, the issue is these people think that Berkie was so stupid that he couldn't have the knowledge to do this on his own. And
right, but I don't understand why. Like, what is so complicated about that symbol? Like
nothing.
I don't get.
There's nothing complicated. If you gave me a piece of paper and told me to draw some witchy thing with crosses and arrows, I would draw something very similar. And I've never read any of these books. I think they're the dumbest. I tried reading Occult Bondage and Deliverance. I couldn't get past the first 2 pages.
I could flip through that book and make a great symbol with using all pieces of all these symbols up there. I don't understand why it's,
right.
I don't get it.
It's ridiculous. So here again, for those people out there who think Berkowitz was so stupid and didn't have the knowledge, here on the book that he specifically says was one of his biggest influences, you have X's, you have male and female signs, you have circles. Here's the Son of Sam symbol: X's, male and female signs, circles, right? And a cross and an S, which probably just means Sam, right? And a cross because he loved putting crosses on things. He was sending the same stuff to the Netto family. Remember, Jackie Netto said that her letter had the exact same symbol on it as well.
Right.
So there's the answer for the Terry heads as to where he got the occult that he could have. Now, we're not saying that this is a fact. I'm not saying that this is anything more than informed and intelligent discussion on a topic. What I am saying is that unlike what the Terry heads think, I know that Berkowitz had the ability to do this on his own without any help. He didn't need John Carr. He didn't need Eliphas Levi. All he needed was this book, and he could have gotten it on his own. So, John, any thoughts on that before I go to the next the next topic on this, which is kind of important?
Yeah, just what I keep trying to say is as far as the letters and the symbols, what I really mean to say is I don't get the complexity. They're not that complicated.
They're not. You're right.
It's the controversy. Why couldn't he have done these things? That letter is not. The letters are not some kind of.
They're not Edgar Allan poetry.
Yeah, I just don't get it. It's
the letters.
A poor argument that it's tough even covering it because I feel like if you need to explain this to people, they're just not going to accept it.
You're right, but what we're doing here is hopefully for our audience, so they can see for themselves this research that's never been done before, and the synthesis and the putting together of things from Berkowitz's life that makes sense. And also, I'm hoping that there are some people out there in the Terry camp who might be on the fence and who might be able to be convinced with this stuff. So another argument that Maury Terry made was that Berkowitz didn't draw the symbol, was that he took it from John Carr, and that he drew it wrong, and that he had to practice it a bunch of times, and that he drew it wrong a bunch of times. Now, I want to talk about that, and that's from this passage in the book. Give me a second. Let me just take some water. And John, we're almost done with the show, so we're doing good on time. All right. So this is about the arrest, okay? So this is right after the arrest. When Zigo poked through the Ford, Berkowitz, whose apartment didn't face the street, paced the living area. Earlier that morning, he'd gone downstairs and put the duffel bag into the car and jammed the hastily scrawled note into the glove compartment. The letter was written in longhand. There hadn't been time to copy the stylized, slanted block letter printing of the Son of Sam letter. Son of Sam. He also plagiarized a poem, apparently inspired by another individual, adapted it to Craig Glassman, wrote it on a manila folder, and drawn the Son of Sam symbol graphic symbol beneath it. He sketched the symbol incorrectly, reversing the Mars and Venus signs positions from the original used in the Breslin letter and adding arrows to the ends of the X. A Yonkers police official would later find pieces of paper on which Berkowitz practiced drawing the symbol. Berkowitz's printing also faltered in his attempt to mimic the Son of Sam method. Unlike the letter to Breslin, which contained only capital letters, the ode to Glassman was sprinkled with several lowercase letters done in the normal Berkowitz style of printing. One would have thought Son of Sam knew his own techniques. The poem said, because Craig is Craig, so must the streets to be filled with Craig, death, and huge drops of lead poured down upon her head until she was dead. Yet the cats still come out at night to mate, and the sparrows still sing in the morning. So, John, I have a lot to say about this, but tell me your thoughts first.
Yeah, I mean, he made a mistake on the letter, so that's your way of saying he didn't write the other letter. I mean,
just reading it, my problem is the fact that he thinks that Berkowitz always had to write in longhand. We know that Berkowitz didn't always write he's saying that Berkowitz always had to write in the block letter printing in order for it to be authentic.
Right.
Berkowitz didn't write always in the block letter printing. He actually only did that for the Son of Sam letters, and he said specifically that he did that to make it look spooky. Those were the only letters he wrote actually in that block letter. He wrote plenty in as we're going to see with lowercase letters. Also, I have a problem with Maury's methodology here and thinking, because as you said it, and you said the same thing. It's like he goes, oh, one would have thought Son of Sam knew his own techniques. His own techniques. Why is there a rule that Berkowitz had to draw it all the same, exactly the same? What rule is there that he had to do these letters in only block letters? Where's the rule that said he had to draw this exactly like the Breslin letter? Like, where is that rule?
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
So here are those letters, and here is the two. These are two different versions of it. And I did a show on this when we were on the paid channel. There's two different Craig is Craig letters, both written by Berkowitz, both in his handwriting. But we can clearly see how they're different. The printing is different, right? So he was practicing these letters,
right?
Okay? And the symbols are slightly different too than the Son of Sam symbol. But my thing to say to that is, so effing what?
Right.
Where's the rule that he had to draw this exactly the same as the Breslin letter? Where's that rule stated?
Yeah, and he might have been in a hurry. He might have been having one of his fits, and he was writing the letter hastily, and
Right, exactly.
for the block letters. It's really so meaningless,
It's completely meaningless. And this Q, by the way, looks this symbol here looks exactly like his Q's that he wrote when he wrote the letter queen, the word queens. But I wanted to show that because again, it's more flawed Maury logic. He just said to us that Berkowitz always 100% had to write it exactly the same, otherwise it was a conspiracy. And
Right.
that's flawed logic. Berkowitz was allowed to draw it differently in different letters. He was allowed to do longhand, and here he is printing a letter, right? I mean, script. You saying that because he's written script that this is not following his own techniques? It's ridiculous. But the reason why I wanted to show this, John, is because look what's at the bottom of this letter by Berkowitz. Here's an X, right? So this guy was drawing X's on letters. Look at this. Whoa, look, Sam Carr, my master, X, right? Just like the son of Sam symbol. Craig Glassman worships the devil and has power over me, X.
Huh.
So that is, guys, the presentation for today. I wanted to just show you again in stark detail that Berkowitz was drawing X's all over the place. Here he is with let's see if there's any so this is all block letters. Yes, that looks exactly like the Borelli letter. But here, look, here he is. Oh, I thought he had his own style. I don't know what happened to John. Hopefully he'll reappear. But here he is, right? Here's the block letter, and here's a lowercase, right? I thought he had to, and here's a lowercase, the T, right? Oh, I thought he had to write it all the same. I thought that this was, he only had to do it one way. Otherwise, it's not legitimate. Again, this is the simplistic, flawed thinking of the Maury Terry fan that really, really bothers me. So Sam Smith says, was Berkey trying to X himself out of society? Anyway, I don't know what happened to John. So hopefully he comes back. But we're at the end of the show anyway. So I'm going to give John a second to come back while I read some of the chat here and see if anything good came up that I missed. Book Club had a good one here regarding Tom Turkey and Darlene. Junkies who were willing to say anything to get to the Queen's DA office to leave them alone. I agree with that. Furby Loves writes, has the black pimp from 42nd Street, I forget his name, debunked bringing kids to Untermeyer and them going missing? No, I believe that that's true, that we're talking about Ace the Hinge Brown. I believe that Rothstein, Mayor Jim Boots, his honor, Jim Boots Rothstein, was onto something with the Untermeyer to the 42nd Street to Untermeyer pipeline with kids. I believe that there's facts there. I just don't think it had anything to do with Son of Sam. So this guy Ace Brown, he was involved in a wholly different criminal conspiracy. And Moet, of course, she remembers Ace Brown, Ace the Hinge Brown. And of course, Ruby said, what I just said, I believe Ace Brown is separate, to push more into trafficking. All right, let's see. Here's Al. What is this guy? Al Machines. If you read Albert Pike and the Zionist movement toward establishing it as a cult, okay, that's fine. That's just not really what I'm into. I couldn't care less about Albert Pike or any of that kind of stuff. Here's a guy saying, I got info pertaining to the occult with my library card and the assistance of the reference desk librarian. Right, exactly. So you didn't need the internet back in the 70s to do this. And we already know that Berkowitz was well versed in going to the library. That's how he found his mother, his biological mother. And Michael Laurette says these symbols are from the Lesser Key of Solomon. I'll take your word on that. I don't know from any of this stuff, despite what people think. I don't give one flying F about the occult. I think it's the stupidest shit imaginable. People who are into the occult are idiots, nerds, dweebs, Dungeons and Dragon losers from the 80s. Let's see. David was a glutton. Was a glutton for White Castle hamburgers on Bellboard Northern, lived in Bayside. Yes, that is true. He would often gorge on White Castle after his shootings. Yes, just a number. So the lieutenant, actually, he was a detective, was as mad as a box of frogs, and Maury used him as a credible source of information. Yes, Maury did that with Carl Denaro. Maury did that with Nasa Moskowitz, and Maury did that with Detective Chinati. Now, another thing that I didn't get to in today's show, which I want to get to, I'm trying to give John a chance to come back here. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was in going back to Caparrelli's book. So you got Michael Francis out there right now talking about making the rounds about his Berkowitz interviews. And Michael Francis is saying, yeah, he was involved in Satanism. And yeah, Nasa Moskowitz forgave him at the end of her life because he didn't shoot her daughter and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to show you an interview from Nasa Moskowitz from the year 2000. When I stopped by her Miami Beach apartment one morning, Nasa Moskowitz, now 66, emerged wearily from her bedroom, her thin body covered by a pink nightgown. It's been 23 years, she said, taking a seat in the beige easy chair from the living room. I can't believe it. She's been dead more years than she was alive. As she spoke, she sat a few feet from a lit TV with the sound off. Night or day, her TV is always on. There's one in her bedroom and another in the small living room. At night, when she takes pills to fall asleep, she mutes the TV. Then when the morning comes, she clicks on the noise to help deaden the loneliness, the emptiness that makes her feel as if someone had cut out her stomach. If she tries, she can even go a day without thinking about 20-year-old Stacy, but the memories always return. Quote, that piece of garbage. He's walking around while my daughters are dead. No, unquote, she said, shaking her head. It's not even Stephen. He did terrible things and people forget it. Her voice rising, her mouth drawn in disgust, she added, they look at him like a little god. If he wasn't in jail, he wouldn't be with the Bibles. Quote, what was he before? A nothing. He worked in the mailroom. He has a little power. Come on, that would make anyone drunk. He doesn't deserve to live. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If it's good enough for the Bible, it's good enough for me. I'll say it until the day I die. So Nasa Moskowitz didn't forgive David Berkowitz, despite what Michael Francis says. She wanted him dead. Then this was an interview from the year 2000. It's in Playboy or Penthouse. If you type in Nasa Moskowitz, Playboy, Penthouse, Son of Sam, Berkowitz, it'll link up there at some point. So again, this Caparrelli book, I have no doubt that the interview stuff with Berkowitz is on the money, totally legit. But this guy doesn't know the case, and he's telling you things that just simply aren't true. Berkowitz did not hang out in Untermeyer Park with Moloch, and Nasa Moskowitz didn't forgive him. So these are just like the things that I try to do to counter disinformation out there. I'm not saying Caparrelli's a disinformation agent. What I am saying is that he should have talked to us and had us as I don't know what would be the word, as references, as people to talk to when he wanted to talk about this case in the book, because he's putting into this book complete myths about Son of Sam. So anyhow, that's really all I can say for today. I guess John didn't come back. I'm sure I'll get a message. Maybe something happened with his internet. But in either case, guys, I want to say thank you so much. Another fantastic show. Hopefully we got some things coming up. Life has been very busy personally for me behind the scenes. I haven't had much time to do much Son of Sam work, but hopefully that stuff is calming down and we'll be able to get back into the saddle. All right. So listen, take care, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you very much.